Bluetooth. Can you hear me?
Hi, this is Crookson. Can anyone hear me out there?
This is UMD. I can hear you. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. You seem to be a little low, but I can turn you up. My audio sound clean?
It does.
Okay. Yeah, yours seems low. Without another site to compare it to, I don't know. How about if you talk to me from the console mic? Let's see how that sounds.
What about now?
Yeah, that sounds good.
Yeah, I was standing in front of the audio input, I guess.
Okay. Nope, that sounds where I would think it would be.
Perfect.
All right. Anyone at Morris? And is that Rochester, or I don't know who the other side is that started, but okay, that looks good.
Hello. Hello, Morris.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes,
All right.
it's a little loud back here right now. So here pretty quickly we'll get kicked off and get rolling.
Good morning. Good morning, everyone. I know the music was very energizing. I liked it, but we got to get started, unfortunately. But the best part's over. The music's done. No. And now the bad part happens. So thank you everyone for coming out today. This is a great crowd, and I'm really excited about it. I think this is the exciting part to me. It's when we actually get to get our hands dirty and do some stuff. And that's exciting to me because I think there's a lot of expertise in this room that'll contribute to a really great end product. And so I can't wait to get started. I just want to start here with the agenda real quick. You're going to have to listen to me for a brief period of today, and so I'll apologize up front for that. We're going to cover our charge after this quick introduction. We'll do a little kind of welcome activity. We'll talk about how we're going to organize the work of this community of practice, how we're going to prioritize that work to make sure that we get done what needs to be done on the timetable we're talking about, and then we'll cover our goals and next steps at the end there. So I first would like to stop honking, so that was the mute honking for, and introduce our leader here. Larry Story will be heading this community of practice, as many of you probably saw at the town hall. He's been here at the U for 12 years, and many of you know him.
I'll walk across system campuses, you'll see a glimpse of me.
There you go. That was Larry Story, like sashaying across the webcam there. He plays a lot of fantasy baseball, and he was voted most likely to become a vampire. And if you want to hear that story, you have to talk to Larry about it, because I would do it no justice. So, Larry.
All right. Well, welcome. Thank you for getting here today. I appreciate it. I think I'm always a big believer that the answers are in the room. So I feel like the things we need to do and figure out, we've got the right people in the room to do that. So I'll go back a little bit to the agenda just to say like how I see the day going. The day, like we're going to be here all day. We're not going to be here all day. Maybe we'll be done in 5 minutes, but probably not. So we have a lot to do, and I'll be going over that in a little bit. But so we're going to have a welcome and introduction. We're going to have a little table thing. I think most people that are here have gone through fCoPs. A lot of us know each other, so we're not going to do that crazy formal. So there'll be a moment of you're going to sit at your tables, introduce yourselves. If you don't know people, this is a great opportunity to get to know people, talk about why you're here. But because we're a lot of here are veterans, we're not going to spend a ton of time on that because we have other things to do. I'll talk about how I'm trying to organize our work, because we have a lot of work to do, and we could do a million things, and we don't want to do a million things. We want to do the top things. So that's going to be our next prioritizing activity, is figuring out sort of, can we leave here with some idea of the top things we need to be doing next? Like, what are our next steps? So we're leaving here. If you're like me, for better or worse, when I found out that I was going to be involved with this, I've been thinking about it all the time, and I think that's good work. You're not always in a group. You're not always at work working. Sometimes I'm driving. I'm thinking about this project. And then we'll talk about the next steps. So we'll pretend we don't see me. So we have a welcome activity, and so traditionally we go 10 minutes. We'll go 10-ish minutes. So introduce yourself, your role here at the U, why you're here today, what you hope to achieve. What you'll see is that I'm kind of a music nerd. And so one theme, like I did pick a theme song for our community of practice, and it's the Elvis Presley song, A Little Less Conversation. So we're going to be moving pretty fast. We're going to be doing a lot of stuff. You'll hear that song a lot. If you don't know it, by the time we're done, you'll know it pretty well. I brought in this bizarre worksite radio that I have for a league that I'm in. It'll withstand the elements. We could throw it from a building if we wanted. It would survive. We could run over it. But I'll play a song, and when that, or a song or a bit of song that'll indicate that we're done. So when that's done, when you hear the music stop, it'll be time for us to finish this activity. So I'd say go to town at your tables for the next 5 to 10 minutes. I'll play a little thing. When the thing's over, I'll be back up here, or Craig will be back up here. So.
Hey, can you guys hear me on the far end? There. Morris Crookston.
Yep, we're here.
Oh, wonderful. My video's frozen, so I was like, oh, I've got a picture of Craig and Larry in kind of a funny pose there, standing.
Yeah,
So
I'm just seeing not much for a feed. It looks like ceiling, maybe.
You what?
Oh, no, I've got them. Their video's moving for me now.
Are they still there?
Yep, it looks like it. I got a woman in red at a desk.
Oh, okay, good deal. That's not Larry or Craig, luckily.
Nope.
I turned the volume down so that we could talk back and forth during this time. So I'll turn you back up once we get back into the larger group. So that way, if you have anything you want to holler out, it'll be heard throughout the room.
Okay, that sounds good.
Any questions, or you want? I could probably throw Larry here on the headset, so you could hit him with a question or two if you'd like.
Not so much. I'm more interested to see what our work schedule is going to look like here.
Okay, super. All right, I'm going to mute because I'm a mouth breather.
Okay.
Oh, there's the music. Can you hear that?
I can.
All righty, I'm going to turn your volume up, and I'm going mute.
Okay.
All right, so I hope that went reasonably well. People probably know each other. I see lots of tables where people know each other. So didn't want to spend a ton of time because we got lots to do. So I'm going to hand it off to Mr. Vance here, who's going to talk a little about our charge.
Mr. Van, you're not getting paid for this.
You're the one who wears the Vance in the family, right?
All right. So this is going to be a recap for a lot of people, so I'm just going to try and go quick through it. If you went to last Help Desk Community Practice, you saw some of this, so I'm going to make it brief. I just want to be clear that we have two overarching goals in this fCoP. One is to respond to governance input, and that's an easy one to forget in the context of the overall project we've been working on, but the last round of governance input collection identified several things that end users aren't totally jazzed about the way some groups do end user support. Obviously, it's not everyone doesn't do the same thing right now. So we just want to be sure that we don't have to re-engineer these processes again. So when we create these standard operating procedures, our goal is to be considerate of that governance input and ensure that it's reflected in the work we create. If you watched the town hall or went to the town hall, it's very likely you heard Scott talk about one of his pet peeves in terms of governance input that we heard, and it's administrative policy. So that's one of those things that's not an explicit called out goal, but overall we want to respond to that input from governance in the way we create these. And then two is to advance the help desk consolidation. You've probably seen this little graphic before, but Task Force 1, also later rebranded the Service Definition Task Force, was headed up by Jamie, and that created the what we're doing, kind of the scope of work that we have to create standard operating procedures for. That work has been handed off to this new community of practice. It'll take that previous what we're doing and add the red arrow of governance to it, so just to make sure that that influences our work. And it's going to create a series of SOPs. When those SOPs are initially going to be created specifically for implementation in OIT. So we're going to scope the implementation down a little from everybody to OIT, and then we will kind of extend the SOPs to be more broadly applicable and help other units implement them. So I'm not going to kill you with this slide. So this is a high level of what came from Task Force 1. Technology consulting was kind of its own creature, and technology support had several kind of sub-bullets. This is the stuff we'd probably traditionally associate with end-user support activities. I personally feel that Task Force 1 did a really great job here, working in CBS and seeing things from the OIT perspective as well. I think all these things are happening today inside of most support operations, and it's really great to to find a way to document it and convey it in a more clear fashion than just the kind of tangible knowledge we tend to have associated with our work. That said, we have made one slight modification to the Task Force 1 recommendations or scope to this group, and that is the very last one there, small event support. When looking at the context of delivering small event support, it does traditionally in mini collegiate units such as CBS get delivered through the end user support function. But when we're talking about a large centralized help desk operation, it probably doesn't align with that function as closely. And a matter of fact, in the context of OIT, they have another group that does event support. So that group will be responsible for better understanding small event support and creating a service that's right-sized to the needs we identified around that. So I won't ask this group to work out small event support, basically, but we will address small event support. So we're in no way reducing the scope of what Task Force 1 said. We're just tackling one of the many things that identified slightly differently. So that, like I said, I'm going to try and not bore you with too much of me talking, especially because Larry's immensely more entertaining than I am. So I'll just shoot through these criteria of success and then give you an opportunity to ask questions about this high-level charge, and Larry will break this down about how we really accomplish this task. So, what are our goals for these standard operating procedures to operationalize Task Force 1's what? First, they have to enable OIT to become more efficient via using some from standard practices. Two, they have to address consumer concerns about current end user support services. This is that governance feedback component. That's very important that we handle that instead of creating the practices and then re-engineering them. We'll just burn out. Everybody has to implement those SOPs and their customers to do that. And then enable units to adopt the SOPs, and this is that work of generalizing them and extending them to be applicable and adoptable by many varieties environments outside of just OIT. And then because I believe it's very important that we don't just conduct like a conceptual activity, I'm also asking this community to operationalize what we're talking about a little bit, and so that's to assist in implementing these SOPs in 5 units, not OIT. Now that is different than consolidation. That just says 5 units, several of which have already volunteered, so it won't be a huge effort in finding them. Will change the way they practice help desk with their current staffs to match the way the university more broadly practice help desk. And the reason a unit would do that is it empowers that unit to more easily leverage the central help desk operation, and should that unit collect, merge into that central help desk operation much more seamlessly. I think this makes a lot of sense for units to consider because, the current end user support operations in each unit really tend to be very well tailored to that unit. They have developed the relationships in that unit, and thus they're the best people to drive change in that unit around establishing these SOPs inside the unit. So instead of someone from outside the unit trying to do it, this is a much more graceful and efficient methodology for the customers impacted by it. So that was fast, but I also want to respect your time and not bore you with the same speech 100 times. What questions do you have for me, if any? You can ask your questions at any pace. Questions? Yep, so that actually took a long time to figure out that methodology because there's a lot of different units, ways to define a unit. You can break it down by the financial system, by a variety of other things. We decided to define it by discrete IT operations. So in the College of Biological Sciences, we have one IT end user support desk, so that would be one unit and one IT operation. In CSE, they have several IT operations, and so that would be defined as several units, even though it's not is one in the context of one college. Does that make sense? And we have a master list we're happy to share. how we broke this down. Additional questions? All right, great. Get closer to your next musical interlude. So.
Right. Yeah, I'm back. So let me just think about to try to summarize how I've, for better or worse, I've had an entire week or so to think about this. So just think about the big picture pieces that we're doing. So to me, they're phased, where there's a first phase, which is what we're going to start today, of we're creating the SOPs. So we're deciding what they are, we're defining them, then we're handing them off to OIT, then we're coming back and saying, what do we need to do with these OITs to help these units that have volunteered implement them? Maybe there's some change management pieces that we have to do. We have to think about rolling out the project. Maybe they have to be tweaked a little. Maybe we're getting some feedback from OIT on the SOPs we made that we need to change them or adjust them in some way. And then we're rolling out. I mean, it's a pretty fun project. We're actually going out and helping the units implement these standards, learning from that process. So ideally, when we're handing it off in the future, that people go, oh, they learned this and they wrote down these things that they learned, so they'll help me, so that we can all help each other come to these standards together. And then the last piece is an informal community of practice that will own the standards. That's my understanding. That may or may not be. That there are pieces in my mind that I think, they're super clear, and those are the things that I feel like we'll start doing those today. The things that I may be less clear on, we might delay until I become a little more clear on them. Because maybe the core team will get together, we'll decide how we want to implement them. So that's usually how I work, is I start with the things I know we can start doing, just start doing them, and we'll figure out the other things. So that can be comfortable for some people. It's a comfort zone for me. But I'm going to walk you through sort of how I adjusted in my brain to think about what we need to do today, because there's a lot of us in here. This is a high expense for the university to be here, so how do we make the best use of our time and honor that we all have other things that we could be doing? So Craig set up some milestones already. What I did was I integrated the milestones with the meetings that we already have scheduled, sort of to give you guys a broad picture. So our last meeting is February 3rd. So in February, we're done. Maybe we can convince Rex or Craig to buy us pizza or parfaits or whatever we're going to get. Maybe we can convince them to do something. We'll hang out in here. We'll high fives and virtual high fives at their system campuses all around and say, job well done. On February 1st, which I think is a Saturday, we'll have implemented standards in 5 units that are not OIT. January 6th, we'll have our 4th meeting. And that phase, if we're saying we're going to have to implement it in 5 units, we're going to be reviewing an implementation process that's already going on. We're going to be thinking about this fCoP and how are we going to start it up. Then in December 13th, this is a date that Craig selected, that the implementation team is selected. So whoever is going to be working on that team, we may have already been talking about this. If we're really organized and we're knocking stuff out, maybe we know who that implementation team is sooner rather than later. But I think there are going to be people that may be more interested in implementing than figuring out the standards. So implementation obviously will begin soon after that. We haven't picked a date. Maybe we move the date sooner. We'll see. We have to deliver the SOPs to the community on December 9th. That's another charge. On December 3rd, there's going to be that 3rd meeting. So if we're going to be delivering the SOPs and we're going to be starting to implement, we've got to be thinking about those things. We're going to be reviewing our work on the community SOPs. We're going to be saying, here are the 5 units we know we're dealing with. We're going to be thinking about change management, because I think most of us know, if our people know us and we're doing things a certain way in our unit, and then somebody comes and says, let's do it a different way, it's more a people thing than a techie thing. November 18th, we're delivering the SOPs to OIT, so OIT starts implementing them. We're not involved in that process, other than I'm sure they'll give us feedback, but we give our work to them. So if we're delivering the SOPs to OIT by the 18th, then our next meeting, think about that. This is our first meeting. By our next meeting, we need draft SOPs. That's pretty fast. So we'll be reviewing the drafts of what we've done. We'll be looking at the gaps to say, what have we missed? What else do we need to be doing? And then I think at that point we'll also be saying, like, who's interested in working on the implementation? We're not doing it yet, but start thinking about doing that. So this week, think about that. Like, this is what we're doing this week. So by the end of the week, the affinity groups that we're going to talk about, or I'm going to talk about in a second, they're going to be organizing and getting together. From my perspective, like, by Wednesday, that's moving pretty fast, I guess. By Wednesday, ideally, I'd like a good idea of who are going to be leading our affinity groups. In my mind, I'm not 100% sure how I see the core team going, but it makes sense to me. Whoever's leading these affinity groups, I'd like for them to be on the core team. And today's our kickoff. So today will be, when you're going off into the world, you'll be signing up for what you're interested in doing on the most immediate task. Like, I'm not going to be soliciting today for the implementation team. Does this all sort of make sense? Okay, just checking. So my takeaway from looking at it is, like, we gotta get moving. Like, we gotta go, because if we're gonna be done and have rolled out a bunch of stuff by February, like, if we have to have SOPs delivered soon after the next time we meet, in just a little over a month, we gotta move pretty quickly. So when I think about what could we do today, like, that was a big thing for me. Like, I could come and I could talk the whole time. People know I'm a talker, so that's doable. But having this many people in the room, what's the best use of our time? How can we get going? So I'll talk a little bit about how I've decided that we can organize the process. A lot of that is taking what that Task Force 1 team just completed. I've already asked our esteemed Kevin Smith to help us organize a separate group that he's going to head up that's part of our working groups. Not an affinity group. We could call it a working group, affinity group, but it's Kevin's going to pick people that he knows, works with ITIL well, and he's going to be defining from a really broad layer, like the master processes that things go in. It's going to be agnostic in terms of what the processes are doing. So the incident process, the request process, an incident like something's wrong. It doesn't matter what the wrong is. It's what does that process look like for us at the University of Minnesota? I need something. What does that process look like for the University of Minnesota? Broad. But what you could call a framework. And then we're going to be taking these other things that we know that we do every day, and that's what we're going to be starting to do today, and putting them into these processes and saying, what does it look like? What does it look like that Scott wants to be able to log in and get admin privileges on his install things? What do we think that look like? How should that work? What's a knowledge base look like? What's asset management look like? There's some fairly large topics. There's some that are smaller. Like, you'll notice, at least on here at the moment, consulting. So I picked out the categories that Task Force 1 did related to technology support, because I felt like I get that. We can start doing that today. The consulting piece, I'm like, not 100% sure how that would look. That may be something that the core team, we get together and talk about how we're going to do standards for that. I also took out loaner laptops temporarily because I feel like that seemed pretty close to done when we were talking about it. I don't know that we need to get people together in a room to talk about, to do the details of that, because we can massage it a little bit, come back. So the next time we're here, someone will be talking about loaner laptops and what that might look like. You'll have an opportunity to look at it. But we don't need 12 people thinking about loaner laptops. So just trying to think of the best use of our time. From my perspective, 4 categories at the bottom of the slide. But those categories are super, super deep. Like, we could do this 10 years. Like, we could be talking about standards for a long time. So in my mind, it's like, well, how do we decide what's the most important thing to do? We know, one, because from IT governance data and from Scott himself, like, he wants to be able to install software. So that's something we have to figure out. Some tasks we're going to know from the IT governance data. Some priorities have come from the Task Force 1 data. And from my perspective, community feedback, like, that's what we're going to be doing in our task here, is just trying to figure out what are the first things we should be doing. We have a limited amount of time. What are the most important things that we should be thinking about in those categories? And then the community feedback for me is like, everybody, as far as I'm concerned, can look at the work we're doing. They don't have to be in the room. If they have feedback on it, we want it, so we can be as good as we can be. So with that in mind, I have a prioritizing activity that Jen is going to lead. That's related to brainstorming tasks to complete the work for these 4 categories. Now, I counted the number of tables we have, and we got, I think, 13. So we have to figure out, one thing, logistically, we have to figure out where are the tables so people can go to the right place. We could just stay where we are and assign people. I don't know if you have. Right. We have to do 3 tables for each, but do we make people get up or do we make them stay? Darren has a suggestion. Darren has a question.
Process versus tools. In terms of how we want to work these things out, I imagine I, like many people here, have some very specific ideas as to what we would like to see improved. When we get the process that we want in mind, it's going to require certain tools to make the process go. I would love to see some changes and improvements in ServiceNow. I would love to see some changes and improvements in asset inventory management and in computer management. I would love to see some changes and improvements in Service Gateway.
Sure.
How much leeway and latitude do we have to say, hey, as part of this process improvement, these tools have to improve to make our processes go the way we want them to go?
Well, I can say I'm a big believer that processes should be software dependent. That doesn't necessarily mean that, so they should be independent of the software we choose. So if we choose a different software application, the process should be pretty good. Like, it shouldn't matter. But we also know we've made commitments to certain applications, and these are the applications we have. Like, I feel like we can ask for anything. That doesn't necessarily mean we're going to get everything we ask for. I think that's always a good lesson that we can say, we want these 12 things. Maybe we get 2 of them, but that's the way the world works, and we don't know. Like, and we won't know until we ask. So I think shoot for the moon as far as what we think is the best way to do it. And in shooting for the moon, maybe we get into orbit, and that's pretty good. But we just go for as much as we can get. I think don't limit what we're doing before we start doing it, if that makes sense. Is that good? Anyone else have questions? So to me, the big initial thing is, do we just have tables say they're this, or do we allow people to move? Do you have thoughts?
I'm thinking let them move.
Okay.
Yeah. Been sitting a while.
Okay. So you comfortable,
Okay.
Beck?
Right. So for those of you that don't know me, my name is Jen Mine, and I work in organizational effectiveness, and I am pretty much devoted to supporting the communities of practice for IT. So you might see me in the future as well. So for this activity, you're going to look at those 4 areas of work, and you're going to be spending about 20 minutes with a group of people trying to build on the work that was done by Task Force 1. Before the meeting, Larry was drawing this thing on the whiteboard that not everybody can see, but Task Force 1 sort of took that high-level, big-picture view of those 4 categories. And now this group, we need to kind of go a little bit deeper. And we could spend our whole time going into the weeds and getting really, really deep, and we don't want to do that. So thinking about these 4 areas, brainstorm what is sort of just beneath that big picture. What are some of the top tasks or most critical tasks that we need to explore and start to think about standards related to those things? Does that make sense? Kind of just bringing it down one more level than Task Force 1. Okay? So 20 minutes, there is going to be a report out. So think about how you want to capture your conversation. Maybe you want to have somebody write on the whiteboard or in a Google Doc, or identify somebody to do that for you. There is a ZURL that has kind of the bullet points from Task Force 1, right?
Yep.
Can you remind me what is in that document?
Right. So I literally, as that Elvis song was playing, I was making that Z-link. So let's hope that it actually works. But what I did was I took out information from the Task Force 1 document. I feel like I'm, Elite Army Fighting Force Task Force 1. Just so that we would have an understanding of the context. So to think about what may be in these categories. An example might be that proactive maintenance, the way it was presented, is like what we would call computer management, because we've had a computer management group going. Self-help would probably be acknowledgement, things related to that. New hardware and software would probably include asset management, break-fix support, calling and going in the field and doing things like that. But so when I thought about it, I'm like, hey, if I'm new to this and I'm asked to do this task, what would I need to know to get me going? And so that I tried to put, so what that link is that links to a doc that links to a doc. Okay. I will do that right now. But I'll just say one other thing, that the idea of our task is that these will be deliverables that for the affinity groups that start going, so that leader, we can say, hey leader, here's some things that you might start working on, because we need to just, today we're ideally leaving with some of the tasks that could be done, as well as an idea of what the top tasks are. So let me look at the doc. I thought I shared it with everyone with the link, but maybe not.
Okay, so we're going to have 3 tables for each of these 4 areas, and we've got 13 right now, so it's going to get a little cozy. How about if we make these 3 tables here, Mark, Renee, Connie, new hardware and software, and then this table, and this table, these 3 here, break, fix, support, and then these 3 tables right here, self-help, and then 3 tables here for proactive maintenance. And I'll check in with you in about 20 minutes.
So I'm just going to say it looked like some of the links weren't going to the right places since I was doing them in the last moment, but I believe I fixed them.
Is this meeting adjourned?
Nope, it goes till 11:30.
Okay. And has anybody from Duluth shown up? Do you know?
No, not so far.
Are you anticipating anybody from Duluth showing up?
I wouldn't know, but probably not. Nope.
Okay, thank you.
No problem.
just one place to go for all your spatula needs. A giant warehouse of spatulas for every occasion. Thousands to choose from in every shape, size, and color. And because we eliminate the middleman, we can sell all our spatulas factory direct to you.
Okay, I'm just checking in with you guys. You're going to have 5 more minutes, and I'd like each group to identify a spokesperson who will report out on your 3 top takeaways. So 3 top takeaways and a spokesperson, 5 more minutes.
I'll let it get to the refrain. Poor Jim. All right. I'm excited that I see people still going. Like Matt, way to go, Matt. Like we have a lot of award winners here. So I'm interested to know what you guys talked about and how it went. And Jen and I chatted a little about how to word it. It could be your top 3 takeaways. We don't need to know absolutely everything. But sort of it could be the top 3 tasks you see. It could be the top 3 obstacles. It could be a mixture. It's just sort of like what you think the most important things are that you talked about that we all collectively want or should know today. And I think Rex is going to take around a mic. How about Darren? Just looks like he's ready. We know Darren's thirsty.
Thirsty for sharing, thirsty for justice. Okay. We have as you can tell, a fairly large word cloud of things that we think fall under the new hardware and software categories. Our top 3 items were ordering, in terms of whether that's individual versus departments, staff versus faculty. Then on to inventory, whether that's inventory management, inventory forecasting and planning, security, license management for software, all those things we need to do better. And I think most especially, and last and certainly not least, we want better tools. We need something like better support in ServiceNow. We need better integration with ServiceNow and SCCM. We preferably would like to see something like Casper to integrate with SCCM, to integrate with ServiceNow, so that we can have more information at the fingertips of the people doing the actual break-fix support, and that comes in on the front end with us doing good asset inventory management. Questions?
Thanks, Darren. I think they were part of that group.
You guys are all together, all right? I think the next right here.
Oh, this thing's so light. It's awesome. All right, so we were talking about break-fix support. Some of the things that we came up with a whole list of things. One of them was define university-owned versus personal device support standards. If we need to have a differentiation on if a computer is owned by the university or not. Clarify and communicate escalation paths for all aspects of support. I think we do a pretty good job of that for Central, but it gets a little bit murky once you get out to the other distributed units right now. And then, similar to what they brought up, get all the managed devices into ServiceNow so that support can check software and get all the asset stuff figured out from the get-go.
If you'd like.
Spot. I don't want to leave them out. So we started with kind of an overview of the whole thing, capturing the event, escalating the event, and resolving. It actually captures a lot of the initial break fix. But then we worked on a list of topics that are probably going to need some discussion. One of them is the admin access for the support technicians themselves, troubleshooting, how to do it, how to start, repair. How do you deal with an infected computer and very specifically port shutoff? And how do we verify machine integrity for managed or unmanaged computers? And is that important at the time of a visit? And finally, recording the work that's been done already on a computer in ServiceNow.
So for self-help, we end up with a lot of ideas, but then trying to put them into kind of 3 categories. We have communication strategy, so it's defining the audience, making sure that you're using their language, and identifying ways that you can point them to the resources that are available to them. We have expectations for maintaining and creating resources. Part of that is taking inventory, what's already out there, what's available, but then also making sure that you have a process for maintaining those and creating new ones after you determine that there are some gaps. And the last one is really to define success through feedback, making sure that the users can say that the support is good or bad, or there's pieces missing, and then also handoffs when self-help really does need to go to break fix, and then back from break fix is this normalized that it can become part of self-help.
I think we primarily have a pretty long list of things, but we identified the top three that need to be done first in order to figure out the rest of them, I suppose. The number one topic we thought was the definition of proactive maintenance and what that is. Number two is to define the criteria for security levels, which we identified as low, medium, and high. We realized high has some pretty big federal and legal laws that we have to maintain, like the credit card issues and things like that. And then we think defining admin access in particular will also affect a lot of the proactive things, mainly because how do you determine who is proactive versus self-help? So I think there'll be some interesting crossover there with like BYOD and things like that.
I think that's everybody. So thanks. I hope that that folks found that useful. It looked like people were having good conversations. So let's move to our next bit. What are our next steps? Like, what are we going to do from here? So one thing that I did, which I probably should have done before, but I was just making the docs, is that I shared them all with everyone who's signed up for the community of practice. So anyone in the community of practice can edit the 4 docs that we're linking to. So the self-help, break fix, and what I would ideally like, it doesn't have to be the great person who volunteered to communicate, but I'd like somebody from the groups to just make sure we're capturing and maintaining what we talked about. Like, just enter it in as well as you can into the document so we have it shared. Does that make sense? Looks like maybe yes. So after this, I'll be sending out a Google form for people to sign up for various affinity groups. That has been already created. You can pick from the 4 that we've been talking about here. Maybe you want to stay in the group you've been working in. Maybe you heard something somebody else reported and you're like, I would really like to be there. If you are really fired up and you want to participate in all 4, you can try it. I think I often tell our student workers, they're like, how many hours can I work? And I'm like, well, I guess you could work up to 20, but we've had students work 40, and I don't know that it was the best decision they made. But just think about your time and where it's going to be best spent. Ideally, because I feel like we want to get moving, ideally we'll have a good idea, if not know, who the leaders of those groups. It could be 1 person, it could be 2, by Wednesday. Like, ideally, I'd like to have feedback and know if you're interested in being a leader soon, like today, if you can do it, so that then we can figure out who they are by Wednesday so people can start organizing and getting the people together. And then those groups will start creating the drafts of the work we talked about today. We know that our next milestone is a draft version of the top standards ready by our next meeting, which is November 4th, so we're about a month out. So there's a lot to do between now and then. That's why I was saying, ideally, we're going to find the top things to do so we can complete those. We want to try to be completing things. Craig gave some estimates on time. He said he's happy to step away from the estimates if they don't look right. I thought they were sufficiently frightening that I wanted to keep them in here. I don't know that it's accurate. Ideally, if we're working well, I feel like if we're working well as a group, like, I don't want to say this, but like 30% time, I think, like, if I'm doing my job right, ideally I'm not spending 30% time on this project, although I've spent a lot of time in the last week on it. And the group leaders, team leaders, community members, these are estimates. And it's sort of an estimate, so if you have to go and talk to your supervisor or whomever to get leave, that they have an idea about, like, this could take a significant portion of your time, just so you're not overcommitted. and they don't. My boss typically will say, as long as the work gets done. That means like, as long as you're going to take it home and keep working, I don't care. Like, so everybody's different. So we're here at our end. I'll just ask if, do people have questions before we go? Are there things that I missed today? I'll also say, like, I don't know everything. I'm doing my best to get us moving. So if you have feedback on this process or what we did today, if you have feedback on other things of how we could work better, if you're saying like, wow, I think Task Force 1 missed some really big, rocks, let's talk about that. Don't be afraid to contact me and say, you could do this better. I'd like funnier songs, whatever. But other than that, I would say I think we're good to go today. I don't know where we are in time, but Craig has something he wants to say.
I just have a question. Will you DJ the other fCoPs?
I guess so this radio that I have because I'm somewhere where we want to listen. This group of people wants to listen to music, and we are exposed to the elements. So it can withstand. It can be rained on. A lot of things can happen. I guess I could DJ them, but it's pretty heavy, as I learned today. Carrying it across campus, it is a beast of a thing to carry. So I'm not carrying it across the river. If anybody cares, I could just leave it here, so it could be for all the fCoPs to use. But any other questions?
So you said you'll be emailing out a form?
Yep. I will be, I assume, working with the professional and esteemed Kelly Greaves, who will help me figure that out, the email, so that we can, it'll be sort of a summary. Hey, here's what we did. Jen has done this incredible, as usual, graphic of summarizing the meeting. Kelly may have some additions to that or may not. It'll have the forum. It'll have a link to the docs. I'll have as much as I can, just because I'm a big believer and I want everybody to know as much as I know. So, any other questions? All right, well, thank you very much for coming. I will play out our theme song so that it's stuck in our heads the rest of the day. Thank you.